My ex accused me of being a father after 5 years of silence. DNA test showed 0% paternity. But my sister made public signs and protested at my job, so I sued both her and my ex, and took $40,000 they'll never forget. I'm 29 years old. I work in digital marketing for a medium-sized company, and what happened about 6 months ago almost destroyed my career, my reputation, and basically my relationship with half my family. The thing is, my ex, Angela, contacted me after 5 years of no contact, literally 5 years without a single message, and when she finally shows up, it's to tell me I have a 5-year-old son. Just like that, out of nowhere. And not only that, but she also wanted me to start paying child support immediately, as if it were the most normal thing in the world to show up with that bomb after so long. Let me rewind a bit so you understand the full context. Angela and I dated for like 2 years, when I was 22. 23 years old, something like that. It was a pretty normal relationship. Nothing special but not terrible either. The thing is, we broke up because she met another guy and decided she wanted to be with him, which is fine, I guess. These things happen. We stopped talking, and each of us moved on with our lives. And honestly, I never thought much about her again. I focused on my career, had other relationships, and Angela just became another ex from the past. My family was always pretty close, or so I thought. There are 5 siblings total. There's Jennifer, who's 32 and works as an accountant, Trevor, who's 27 and works in it, and 2 others. My parents, Paul and Deborah, always tried to stay neutral in conflicts between us. Although my dad was always more direct, and my mom was more the type who tries to keep the peace at all costs. Jennifer and I were never super close, but we didn't have problems either, We were normal siblings. Trevor and I, on the other hand, always got along really well, like we were the ones who supported each other the most when things got tough. It all started on a normal Tuesday. I was working from home reviewing some social media campaigns when I get a message from a number I didn't have saved. It was Angela. A message said something like, "Hi Samuel, I know it's been a long time, but I need to talk to you about something important." I thought maybe she needed some favor or something, I don't know. I never imagined what was coming. I responded asking what was going on, and she said she'd prefer to talk in person. That made me nervous, because, why after 5 years would she want to see me in person? We agreed to meet at a coffee shop near my apartment like 3 days later. I got there first, ordered a coffee, and when she walked in, the first thing I noticed was that she wasn't alone. She had a small kid by the hand, like around 5 years old or so. The kid was quiet, stayed playing with some toys she gave him while we talked. Angela looked nervous. She kept playing with her coffee cup, and after like 5 minutes of awkward conversation, she dropped the bomb on me. She told me that the kid, Dylan, was my son. Just like that. "Samuel, Dylan is your son, and I need you to start helping me with expenses because I can't do this alone." I literally froze. My son? What was she talking about? I told her that was impossible because we broke up 5 years ago, and obviously, we hadn't had contact since then. She tells me that she realized she was pregnant after we broke up, that she decided not to tell me anything because she was with her new partner and thought he was going to be the kid's father, but now things didn't work out with that guy, and she needed my help. Everything she was saying sounded super weird, like it didn't add up right. I asked her how she was so sure the kid was mine, and she got upset, told me of course he was mine, that she knew it. Right then and there, I told her we needed to do a DNA test. I wasn't going to accept anything without being 100% sure, because the story didn't make sense. She immediately got defensive, told me she found it offensive that I doubted her, that why didn't I trust her word. I explained to her that it wasn't a matter of trust, but of being sure that this was something very serious, and that a DNA test was the most logical thing. She kept resisting, made up like 3 different excuses, that she was afraid they'd hurt the kid with the test even though it's obviously just a swab in the mouth. I don't know what harm it could do, that it was too expensive. He told her I'd pay, that she needed time to think about it. Every excuse in the world. Like 2 weeks went by with her avoiding the topic until finally, after I pressed her pretty hard, she agreed to do the test. We went to a specialized clinic. They took samples from me, her, and the kid, and they told us the results would take like a week. That week was horrible, honestly, because part of me thought what would happen if the kid was mine, how my life would change completely, and another part thought that everything was very suspicious and that Angela was probably lying. The results came on a Friday. I opened the email with my hands, shaking. The probability of paternity was 0%. Zero. There was no possibility that I was Dylan's father. I felt massive relief, but also a lot of anger, because seriously, Angela had tried to drag me into this. Knowing it probably wasn't true, I sent her the results immediately and told her to please never contact me again. She read the message and didn't respond anything. I thought that was the end of it, that she'd realize she screwed up and move on with her life. But no, turns out this was just beginning. Like 2 weeks later, I get a call from my sister, Jennifer. She tells me we need to talk, that she's very disappointed in me. I ask her what she's talking about, and she tells me that Angela contacted her, that she told her everything about the kid, and that she finds it incredible that I'm denying my responsibility as a father. I explain the whole situation, about the DNA test, the results, everything. And Jennifer, instead of understanding, starts telling me that DNA tests, I can be wrong, that maybe Angela needed help, and I was abandoning her, that as a man I had a responsibility. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I told her she was being completely irrational, that science doesn't lie, that I literally had proof I wasn't the father. Things escalated at the next family gathering at my parents' house. It was like a month after receiving the DNA results. We were all there, my siblings, my parents, some uncles and aunts, and suddenly Jennifer stands up in the middle of the living room and starts confronting me in front of everyone. She tells me I'm selfish, that I'm oppressing Angela, that single mothers have to struggle so much, and that I should be supporting her even if I'm not the biological father. She literally said that, even if you're not the biological father. My parents were in shock. Trevor tried to defend me and told Jennifer she was crazy, that I had done the right thing by asking for the test, and that I had no obligation to that kid. That's when a horrible argument broke out between everyone. My dad, Paul, who's always been more about actions than words, told Jennifer that if she kept up with that attitude, he was going to reconsider the financial support he was giving her. Turns out my parents were helping her with rent for her apartment and some other things. Jennifer got really angry, said the family was being unfair to her, grabbed her things and left slamming the door. My mom, Deborah, was crying, trying to calm everyone down, saying we were a family and we had to find a way to resolve this. But resolve what, exactly? I hadn't done anything wrong. I thought after that scene Jennifer would understand she was wrong, but no, things got worse. Like 2 weeks later, I'm at my office working. By then, I had gone back to working in person 2 days a week, when the receptionist calls me and tells me there are some people looking for me downstairs. I go down thinking maybe it's a delivery or something, and I find Angela and Jennifer standing at the building entrance. Jennifer had a sign that said, "Samuel is an irresponsible father who abandons his child." Literally, a handmade sign with thick marker. Angela was there with Dylan, like using him as an accessory for their theater. I literally froze. There were like 10 or 15 people watching the scene, some coworkers, people passing by. I tried to talk to them, told them to please leave, that this wasn't appropriate, that they were making a scene based on lies. Jennifer started yelling at me, called me everything, told me I was miserable, that how could I live with myself knowing that kid didn't have support. I repeated the thing about the DNA test and she yelled louder, saying that didn't matter, that social responsibility was more important than a test. People started taking out their phones and recording. It was humiliating. My boss, the marketing director of the company, came down to see what was happening. I explained the situation as quickly as I could, while Jennifer and Angela continued with their show. He told me to come up to his office. Once there, he explained that he understood my personal situation, but if this happened again, if they showed up at the office again causing disruptions, he was going to have to let me go because he couldn't allow that to affect the work environment and the company's image. He told me to resolve it privately, to seek legal help if necessary, but to keep the drama away from work. I was devastated. My job, which I loved and had worked so hard at, was at risk because of this craziness. That same night, I called Trevor and told him everything. He recommended I find a lawyer immediately, that this had already gone too far. But the next day, I looked for lawyers specializing in harassment and defamation and found Michelle Carter, a lawyer with good references. I met with her, showed her all the messages, the DNA results, photos of the scene at my work that some colleagues had taken, everything. Michelle told me I had a solid case to send cease and desist letters to both Angela and Jennifer, and that depending on how they reacted, we could consider more serious legal action. Michelle sent the letters like 3 days later. In them, she basically told them to stop harassing me, spreading false information about me, and that any additional contact would be considered harassment and could result in legal action. I thought that would be enough, that seeing I was serious they'd stop, but I was wrong. Angela responded saying she had the right to seek support for her son and that I was using my privilege to silence her. Jennifer didn't even respond formally, but she did start a social media campaign. Jennifer created posts on Facebook and Instagram telling my story, obviously from her completely distorted perspective. She said, I had gotten Angela pregnant and now refused to acknowledge my son, that I was using my money and contacts to legally harass a vulnerable single mother. She tagged friends and family, shared posts in local groups. People who didn't know me started commenting horrible things about me. Some of my acquaintances sent me messages asking if it was true, which was humiliating having to explain over and over again. But the worst came when Angela and Jennifer, along with like 5 other friends, organized a protest outside my workplace. Yes, a protest. They showed up on a Monday morning with signs, shouting slogans about irresponsible fathers and support for single mothers. There was an article on a local blog about protest demands responsibility from absent father with photos and everything. They didn't use my full name but put enough information so that people who knew me would know they were talking about me. My boss called me to his office that same day and told me I was suspended for 2 weeks without pay while they decided what to do with my situation. I felt powerless, like my entire life was falling apart because of something I hadn't done. I went back to Michelle and told her we needed to do something stronger. She recommended we file a formal lawsuit for harassment and defamation against Angela and Jennifer. She explained that the process would be long and there was no guarantee of winning, but given everything that had happened and all the evidence we had, there were good chances. She also told me the lawsuit would include a request for monetary damages for damage to my reputation and loss of work income. I agreed. I didn't care anymore if this permanently broke my relationship with Jennifer. I needed this to end. We filed the lawsuit like a week later. Michelle included everything: the DNA results, screenshots of all the social media posts, testimonies from coworkers about the disruptions, the blog article, photos and videos of the protests, threatening messages, everything. The lawsuit was against Angela for harassment and initiation of a defamatory campaign, and against Jennifer for defamation, harassment, and intentional damage to my reputation and income. Angela was the first to respond. Her lawyer, one who clearly wasn't very good, tried to argue that she had the right to seek support for her son, but Michelle quickly showed that after receiving the DNA results, Angela knew perfectly well I wasn't the father, and that continuing to harass me constituted malicious harassment. Like 3 weeks after filing the lawsuit, Angela accepted an out-of-court settlement. She had to pay like $15,000 in damages, delete any post or mention of me on social media, and sign a permanent no-contact agreement. She also had to publish a retraction, saying she had made a mistake and that I wasn't her son's father, although she didn't put many details. Jennifer was more difficult. She insisted she hadn't done anything wrong, that she was just defending a friend, that she had freedom of speech. But Michelle showed her all the evidence of the real damage she had caused. My suspension from work, testimonies from people who had seen the posts and had formed negative opinions about me, the emotional cost, everything. Things got to a conciliation meeting where Jennifer, my parents, Michelle, Jennifer's lawyer, and I sat down to try to resolve this without going to trial. Jennifer arrived at that meeting with a defensive attitude, but when Michelle started presenting all the evidence point by point, when she explained exactly what a judge would probably order if this went to trial, including much larger damages than what we were asking for in the settlement, Jennifer started falling apart. Literally. She started crying, saying she just wanted to help Angela, that she didn't think things would go that far, that she didn't understand why I was being so cruel to her. My dad, who had been quiet most of the time, told her that she had caused this, that she had ignored scientific and logical evidence to pursue a senseless crusade, and that now she had to assume the consequences of her actions. In the end, Jennifer accepted a settlement. She had to pay me $25,000 in damages, more than what Angela paid because her campaign had been more extensive and harmful. Delete all posts about me, publish a public apology on her social media, admitting she had spread false information, and sign an agreement where she committed to never speak publicly about me or about this situation ever again. My mom, Deborah, ended up helping her pay because Jennifer didn't have all that money, which caused more tension because my dad was furious that my mom was rescuing her from her own bad decisions. This whole process took like 6 months total. 6 months of constant stress, of not sleeping well, of having anxiety every time I had to go to work or every time I saw a social media notification. My company finally reinstated me after Angela published her retraction, but things never went back to being the same there. Some colleagues treated me differently, like they didn't really know what to think about the whole situation, and although my boss was professional, I knew this had affected how he saw me. The relationship with my family was completely fractured. Jennifer and I haven't spoken since the conciliation meeting, and honestly, I have no intention of talking to her in the near future. Maybe never. My mom tries to maintain contact with everyone, but you can tell she's divided between supporting me and not wanting to abandon Jennifer. My dad stopped talking to Jennifer completely and told her that until she truly takes responsibility for what she did, not just signing legal papers, but really understanding the damage she caused, he doesn't want to know anything about her. Trevor has been my rock through all of this. He was always on my side, always defended me, and our relationship became much stronger. Sometimes I think about how something as simple as asking for a DNA test, something so logical and reasonable, could unleash all this chaos. I think about that kid, Dylan, who's in the middle of all this without having asked for anything, with a mother who clearly has problems facing the reality of her situation and who preferred to invent lies rather than assume her responsibility. I feel sad for him, honestly, because he's not at fault for any of this. And I think about Jennifer, about how someone can be so convinced of something without evidence, so willing to destroy their own brother's life for a cause that wasn't even real. I don't understand what went through her head, what made her think it was okay to do what she did. Part of me is still angry, very angry, but another part just feels tired. Tired of all the drama, of having to constantly defend myself, of explaining my side of the story over and over again. Now, almost a year after all this started, I'm trying to rebuild my life. I'm still working at the same company, although I'm considering looking for something new, starting fresh somewhere where nobody knows anything about this situation. I've been going to therapy, which helps a lot, because all this definitely left me with some emotional scars. I've learned to be more careful with my privacy, with what I share on social media, with the people I trust. Last week, my dad called to tell me he was proud of how I handled everything, that he knows it wasn't easy, but that I did the right thing by defending myself and not letting them walk all over me. He told me that he and my mom are trying to process everything too, that it's hard when your family fractures like that, but that he'll always be on my side because the truth is the truth and there's no way around that. That conversation made me feel a little better, I guess. At least I know I'm not completely alone in this, that there are people who understand what I went through and who support me unconditionally. Was the whole legal process worth it? The money spent on lawyers, the stress, the family rupture? I don't know. There are days when I think yes, that it was necessary to put a stop to it and prove I wasn't going to let them destroy me with lies. There are other days when I think maybe I could have handled everything differently, although honestly I don't know how. The only thing I know for sure is that I did what I had to do to protect myself, to protect my truth, and that although the cost was high, at least now I can live peacefully, knowing the lies were exposed and that the people responsible had to assume the consequences of their actions.